Pan-African theme to the show this morning, which is amazing because it is so important for organizations that are on the continent to be for the continent and not just a specific country, but making sure that it's all inclusive and we all grow together. One such organization is the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce. This is an organization that is an advocate for a business environment that is conducive to enterprise creation, development, generating employment, and contributing to the socio-economic development of the African continent. Joining us in studio this morning is the founder and chairman of the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, Johnny Muteba. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having us.
Well, it is quite a pleasure to have you this morning. Well, to be someone who is a founder of an organization that is not just for self, not just for local or country, but is for the continent, is a big feat to take on as an individual. So tell us a little bit more about your founding of the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce back in 2015.
So the idea of the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce came because of my exposure to the European business community. Primarily, I started my journey with the French South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry more than 14 years ago. I came across a problem. This problem is that students from across the continent who are studying in South Africa, whether they study at UCT or Stellenbosch or Wits or the University of Johannesburg here, it is very difficult for them after graduation to become employable.
Yeah.
And I saw this problem in 2010, and I realized that we have to find a solution to this African problem. So as a chamber, right from the beginning, the idea was to empower these students, primarily from a number of countries on the continent, but also students from South Africa, to then build the bridge between the classroom and the boardroom. So as a chamber, I've had this idea since 2010, but if it's a space that you don't know that well as a person, you need to actually kind of develop yourself further. So spending about 5 years with the French South African Chamber gave me the confidence. And out of that confidence, I basically decided to roll out the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce in the marketplace. So 9 years later, it's exciting.
Yes.
And the chamber, I believe, is growing from glory to glory. So it's a lot of work, but because I started this from a position of passion, which is not just about me, it's about how all of us collectively in the private sector, working with government, civil society organizations, we can help young people to find their feet in the marketplace. As you know, the problem of joblessness and youth unemployment in Africa is a very big problem. So I didn't want to set up a chamber. I always say we cannot have normal business in an abnormal society, a society that is unemployment, that is poverty, that is inequality. Those are the foundations upon which this organization was established almost 10 years ago. So it's exciting.
Well, it is almost 10 years, and it seems like you've been doing a lot of really amazing work. Africa is, of course, a place that's full of promise, but as you said, there's so much inequality and, structural issues that don't allow these young people to actually thrive, even though they can thrive and they have all the ability to thrive. We see problems of, young people then having to go elsewhere in the world in order to thrive, and that also takes even more away from the African continent. So when you come up with the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, and you know that you have this dream for young people, what are the strategic endeavors to assure that they do get into an environment that they can thrive, but also a conducive environment for their growth and the growth of the continent?
So what we do actually as a chamber, we drive what we call the African agenda. This agenda divided into 3 parts. There is the African agenda for youth, the African agenda for women, and the African agenda for culture. Because you're asking about young people, our agenda for youth is on education, employment, and entrepreneurship. We are actually saying that when we speak about job creation, last year we started working with the presidency on the presidential youth employment intervention. And what we're saying there is that we are not only looking for interventions to put young people to work. We can also come up with opportunities for them to start their own businesses. Instead of waiting for somebody to give you a job, you can actually employ yourself and employ other people at the same time. So we are coming up with a different way of thinking. we are coming up with a Pan-African way of thinking, whereby you see yourself as an African first before you're a South African. And every single time we speak about this, people are like, but what are you talking about? You need to start to think yourself as an African. And once you are at that level, it becomes very easy to connect now South Africa and Namibia and Nigeria and Ghana and Senegal and the DRC, where I actually happen to be from. So it becomes easy for all of us, for those who know what the marketplace looks like, to actually walk this journey with young people. Look at where the SABC is situated. The universities all over the place. How do we reach out to these young people? So in institutions like the SABC is reaching out on internship, student placement. There's a lot of these opportunities. So we do the same as a chamber in partnership with other businesses. I was in Cape Town at the weekend.
Yes.
The German business community there. That's why I was not available.
Yes, right.
But as we speak to all of these businesses, we become advocates. I said to the German business community in Cape Town on Friday, all of these businesses you are opening, all of these opportunities you are bringing here, how will young South Africans actually benefit? So I eventually become an advocate myself. I'm in the creative space. When I speak to the German business community or the French, Deidre and I went to the British Chamber of Commerce event about 2 weeks ago. We want to make sure that we represent those who are not in there. But I just don't want to do that. I want to make sure that young people can speak for themselves. I'm not young. Okay, I'm not youth anymore. So I want to make sure that when we go to these places, young people can actually come with us. As a chamber as well, we are really promoting the agenda for women empowerment. I cannot speak for women. I mean, Deidre is here. I cannot go in there and say, I'm speaking for women. Yeah. So everywhere we go, we want to make sure that we keep the door open, right? Especially for young people. Because opportunities, I believe, even jobs go to people who know some people.
Yes.
So by being in there, we say to them, here is what is happening. This is what Germany is looking for. The German government, for example, just one example, is looking at investing a lot in Cape Town, in the technology space. So where are these young South Africans who are in technology, who need to be at that right place at the right time, where this money is going to? So we need to find them and position them in that city, and eventually opportunities are going to follow them in those spaces. So we do a lot of work, but the passion is youth empowerment.
Well, I like that. Conversations of not just speaking for young people, not just speaking for women, but speaking with them, representing them, but allowing them to also represent themselves in those spaces, using yourselves as a catalyst. We're finding out a little bit more about the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, but for now, let's take a short break. Johnny Muteba is still in studio with us. We are in studio with the founder and chairman of the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, Johnny Muteba, finding out about what they do, the various programs in which they implement to create and become a catalyst for transforming the African business landscape through innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, but also focuses on various programs on culture, youth, and women. Well, you know, a lot of the time when we speak about business, when we speak about growth in various industries, we do understand the youth perspective, or of course we understand the women perspective, but there's also another perspective that you guys focus on that has really captured my interest, and that is the perspective of culture. Tell me why it was important for the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce to also enhance global recognition of African culture.
You see, what happens, especially in the space of chambers of commerce, where I started, 14 years ago, I was having conversations with a lot of these European chambers. These are very powerful chambers of commerce. And I remember speaking to the French chamber where I started, and I said to them, you organize the biggest film festival in the world. Why do you not actually have a space for culture? They say to me, oh, no, we don't do culture. Go to Alliance Française. I spoke to the German chamber. This was 14 years ago. Why don't you focus on culture? Oh, we don't do culture. We've got a center in Parkview called Goethe Institute. Go there. They do culture.
That's where the culture is.
Right? And I spoke to the British chamber, where Deidre and I just went about 2 weeks ago. They asked me, do you know where the British Council is? I'm like, yeah. Those are the people actually who do culture. And I saw a gap in the marketplace. I'm an African.
Yes.
As an African, I truly believe that we are not just a birthplace of humankind. I think culture is primarily African. Of course, I know some people are going to go and say, what is this guy talking about? we are always putting our culture last.
Yeah.
But based on the experiences I've had, for example, in Japan, the Japanese government wants you to know their culture before they do business with you. As Africans, the higher we rise, the more we want to actually kind of divorce ourselves from our culture. I saw this gap and I said there's a business case to be made for the role of culture in trade. Because before you do business with somebody and you know their culture, you're going to do that business very, very well. We also looked at the role of culture in economic development. There is a lot of information out there. I don't want even to go and dig every one of them. The power of culture in terms of job creation, because we work with young people. Culture does not have as many barriers like many other industries. So the barriers to entry are very, very low. But at the same time, we see how people have started, appreciating our music, appreciating African fashion and all of that. So everywhere we go now, as a chamber, we're saying to policymakers, we say to the private sector, that there is a space for culture, invest in culture, because there's no future without culture. Our agenda for culture as a chamber positions culture as a tool for economic development and trade. And we have put in place about 5 objectives. The first objective of this agenda is to strengthen the partnership and collaboration between the private sector, the public sector, and the creative sector. I mean, I was in Cape Town now. Yeah. A city like Cape Town, a city like Johannesburg, a city like Durban, and many other cities, I'm talking just from a South African perspective. Imagine the number of jobs that can be created by enabling culture. Objective number 2 is about training tomorrow's industry workforce today. Objective number 3 is around enhancing funding and financial support. Objective number 4 is building creative industry infrastructure. Objective number 5 is to market brand Africa. We have taken a brand called Africa. We have taken our culture and we are really making sure that we are promoting not just African culture, promoting African nations. You cannot celebrate Tyler as a Grammy Award winner. That's celebrating South Africa, where she's coming from. You cannot celebrate Tusombedu as a South African, creative in the US without actually understanding South Africa, where she's coming from. So we want to make sure that we can bring our culture right next to the brand or the image of not just the countries individually where people are coming from, but collectively as a continent, because our culture, I believe, is actually our ticket to the future.
I definitely see that because, with the Japanese example that you made, a lot of the people think that culture is all about sentiment. Like, oh, okay, we're here to make money. We're not here for all that sentimental things. But culture is money. And we see that through so many, of Asia's business models. Everywhere you go on the African continent itself, there's a China mall in every place, or a China city, and in there is a promotion of not just food, not just business, but a promotion of culture. And when you go there, you learn about their food, you learn about their culture, you buy, and you're not just buying into the products, you're buying into their culture. They sell it everywhere. Culture is for sale, and I'm glad that someone is standing up for that sentiment and saying, hey, this is not just about us wanting to to see you guys in our colorful clothes and our beautiful dances, but we are selling a product that is innate to who we are as African people. But it's almost 10 years in the making, the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, and of course I'm pretty sure you are spearheading for the next 10 years. What does that look like, and how do you want to see the vision grow in the next 10 years?
That's a very good question. So at the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, there's something we say, that culture creates capital, right? I always begin with the end in mind. 20 years from now, we see the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce becoming for businesses in Africa what the African Union is for governments in Africa. So you cannot become what you don't see. We know what the African Union is there for, right? It's this agency set up by African government in 1963, somewhere there in Ethiopia. Can we establish an organization similar that is not run by government, that is run by us? That is basically the vision we have. In August last year, we registered the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce in the US. And before May this year, we're registering the chamber in Australia. Why am I doing that? I know that trade is global. Because if I'm only talking about trade to people in Africa, yeah, it's okay to talk to yourself,
Yeah.
but somehow we want global cooperation, right? While we're talking about global cooperation, we are doing what we call Pan-African integration. So the vision, the long-term plan for our organization is to make sure that small businesses in Africa are empowered, are enabled, are supported, are actually exposed, in the global marketplace.
Right.
The other thing we're doing, we're opening a trade center in Cape Town called the Africa Trade Center. The Africa Trade Center is going to be a one-stop shop for trade investment in Africa. And there will be a desk for Africa, there will be a desk for Europe in there, within Africa as well, a number of regions. But one of the key things we're working on now as an organization is to empower at least 1 million women entrepreneurs. We are starting in South Africa, setting up women entrepreneurship centers. Primarily for now, we're starting in the 3 big provinces here in Gauteng, in the Western Cape and KZN. Eventually, the plan will be to expand the chamber as well beyond that. One mistake we made 9 years ago was for the chamber to be only based in Johannesburg. Only. We're here and we'll go to KZN and other provinces and do work and then come back here. We realized that was actually a very big mistake. We need to be represented in all the 9 provinces in South Africa. The very big opportunity we have coming up is a strategy called Cape to Cairo. Our Cape to Cairo strategy, when you say Cape to Cairo, is basically Cape Town all the way to Cairo in Egypt.
Yes.
But I think maybe I was lazy. I don't know. We have this Cape to Cairo vision and we're like, but we can do this from Johannesburg. That's why our first trade center is actually opening in Cape Town.
Right.
So I met the leadership of the province, from tourism to economic development. It was just amazing being in that space. So by setting up this center, we'll be enabling African, story of success from a business development perspective. But also we want to position African brands in the global marketplace. When we're talking about African brands, I'm not talking about MTN, right? I'm talking about in Africa. Trevor Noah is an African brand, right? Tusombedu is an African brand. So we can position those brands because the more visible they become, Davido is an African brand. The more visible they become, the better brand Africa does. So there's this link, definitely, like you link Zuckerberg with America, right?
Absolutely, yes.
That is basically what we're going to be doing. We're going to focus on people, actually, over the next 10 years, and setting up a platform for business speakers in Africa, influencers actually for African development, not just having other people speak for us. We want to enable people who know Africa, who can speak for Africa in the global stages.
Well, that is all we have time for. Unfortunately, it sounds like it was getting even more interesting. And it sounds like, I'm someone that is definitely really interested in the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce because Palesa is an African brand. But it's 9:31. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can we find out more about this organization?
So the website is panafricanchamber.com. We do have social media pages, but just on the website. Now, of course, I'm the chairman. I'm quite active on LinkedIn and other places.
Yes.
So there's going to be more information as we roll out some of these programs and events we have coming up. So people just need to follow us on social media and we'll be updating all the information there.
Thank you so much for your time.